Good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to present the Early Career Award on behalf of the OSPA Executive Board. The purpose of this award is to recognize the accomplishments of a school psychologist during the first 5 years of his or her career. You may recall last year was our first ever early career recognition. Nominees should demonstrate a commitment to the practice and promotion of school psychology, research, and advocacy, membership in local, state, and national organizations, presentations of research at professional conferences, and participation in volunteer and advocacy events are considered in bestowing this recognition. Today, I am honored to present this award to my colleague in the Akron Public Schools, Mrs. Kate Lavik. Kate completed her graduate work at Kent State University and interned in the Akron Public Schools last year. She began working with us on a full-time basis earlier this year. Kate's daily work over the past year has taken place in the context of highly challenging educational environments. This has included providing comprehensive service delivery to students in a middle school in which 1/3 of all students have been identified with disabilities, are recent immigrants to our country, or both. Kate also provided services to an alternative high school specializing in dropout recovery and an alternative middle school for students with severe behavioral concerns. From providing services to children from families who are refugees and new arrivals to our country, to conducting written language interventions for groups of high school students at risk of dropping out, to implementing RTI models in well over a dozen different buildings across our district, Kate has deployed her wealth of knowledge and experience to positively impact our students in countless ways. Among the many notable accomplishments in her early career has been the special projects that she's undertaken for OSPA. For several years, our executive board sought to compile and professionally archive our rich collection of historical documents and items that stretch all the way back to OSPA's founding. Within just a few months of volunteering to coordinate this effort for the Executive Board, Kate developed key partnerships between our association, the Archives of American Psychology at the University of Akron, and the American Psychological Association. She managed these partnerships with such competence that OSPA now enjoys a historical archive and repository that is the envy of states across the country. For her considerable efforts in leading this initiative, she was appointed to the position of historian and has served with distinction ever since. Kate is a member of both OSPA and NASP. She is presented at NASP's annual conferences in Seattle, San Francisco, and Chicago. And along with her numerous presentations across the state of Ohio, she's even presented in Rome, Italy, on the topic of differentiating between bipolar disorder and conduct disorder. She has several teaching experiences to her credit and even has bilingual skills in the area of Spanish that she brings to her work on a regular basis. She has been a principal investigator in more than half a dozen research projects, the most recent being a chapter that she co-authored for Best Practices in School Psychology, 6th edition. As one colleague put it, I've had the pleasure of working closely with dozens of early career professionals across the state of Ohio for nearly 2 decades. And in terms of skills, abilities, and relentless commitment to scholarly activity, Kate is right at the top of my list. She is an outstanding talent who will do great credit to our shared profession for many years to come. I am going to enjoy working for her someday. It is for these reasons and many more that the OSPA Awards Committee, on behalf of the Executive Board, hereby recognizes Mrs. Kate Lavik to be this year's recipient of the OSPA Early Career Award. Kate?
Thank you for a great introduction, and thank you very much to the Awards Committee and to those who nominated me for this award. I will be brief since I know we all just kind of finished our lunch and you might be wanting to move on to other things. But I would like to thank Kent State and OSPA for helping to involve me on a path towards greater involvement in OSPA and in other state and regional organizations. I would like to thank the entire core faculty at KSU, where I'm still a doctoral student, all but dissertation at the moment, for helping me through my academics, my research projects, and through my dissertation. The presentations and trainings that I've conducted at the local, state, and national levels would not have been possible without the assistance of Drs. Carla Anhalt, Richard Cowan, Kevin McLaughlin, and Frank Sansosti at KSU. In addition, I'd like to thank Dr. Kevin McLaughlin at KSU for presenting me with this opportunity to see the inner workings of OSPA, and by assisting with this archival project that Rob mentioned, where we digitized and collected old journals and test kits for the archives of the history of American psychology. And so through that project 4 years ago, I met Rob and I met Dr. Eric Merkel, and I would like to thank them, Kevin, Rob, and Eric, for helping me get started on this path towards greater involvement in OSPA. And little did I know that 3 years later, I would be completing my internship in Akron Public Schools, and 4 years later, I'd be working full-time in Akron with Rob and Eric as my colleagues. I would like to thank my supervisors from my internship who helped prepare me well for my full-time employment as a school psychologist, Dr. Brad Falkenberg, Mrs. Amy Kirsch, Mr. Jeff York, Dr. Rob Kubik, and the recently retired Dr. Perry Clark. In addition, I'd like to thank my practicum supervisors that helped prepare me for internship, Mrs. Isabel Martinez and Mrs. Kathy Sudry. And before starting my internship, I also worked at PSI as an assistant, and I would like to thank my supervisors there, Mr. Bob Murray, Mrs. Karen Heichel, Mrs. Julie Golden, and Dr. Colleen Lorber for preparing me to work in diverse learning environments with diverse roles. I would like to thank the entire Child Study Department in Akron, along with our new boss, Mr. John Biltz, and echo the words of Mrs. Kelly Kreitz, who put it best: you are all inspiring school psychologists who push each other to constantly stay on top of best practices and are remarkable role models for early career professionals like myself. And finally, I'd like to thank my family, my parents for instilling in me an insatiable need to achieve and bring creativity into everything I do, my brothers and sister for supporting me and being my friends even though I was, and maybe still am, the bossy older sister, my in-laws for also being a great support, and my father-in-law, who's here today, Dr. Paul Lavik, for introducing me to school psychology. And of course, a sincere thank you to my husband, Andrew, who encourages me in my pursuits and who doesn't ask too many questions when our apartment starts to be overrun with old test kits waiting for me to process them before I take them to the archives. So thank you again for this award. There are so many wonderful school psychologists in this room who have done so many great things and made so many accomplishments throughout their careers that I can only dream of trying to match their accomplishments and successes in mine. Thank you again.